Welcome to episode 8 of our third series on the surnames and early families of Appalachia and the good old American South. Today's families will take us from places like Oklahoma and Townsend, Tennessee to Yorkshire, England and the Holy Roman Empire. We'll also get to delve into the history of a Welsh family name that has found a home in Appalachia and the South. If you're new to the channel, I mix in a bit of history, genealogy, and trivia along with the origin and meaning of requested surnames. My main goal in the series is to identify families that have been in Appalachia and the southern United States since before the Civil War, hence the term antebellum. In most cases, they date back to colonial times, and that's certainly the case today. This series is dedicated to the memories of those who gave us life and freedom. And speaking of freedom, if you'd like a free copy of the surname catalog that lists the names and episodes that have been covered thus far on the Vantage Point, stick around to the end to find out how you can get one. It's just an email away. Promises to be a good show, so I hope you'll join me. Number 1, Tiller or Tuller. Let me say at the outset that Tiller is not an alternative way of spelling Tyler, but there might be a few cases in which the change in spelling did happen because of perceived phonics. In the semi-literate world of 18th century rural America, phonics worked well for our ancestors. Even William Shakespeare in the 17th century spelled his name at least 80 different ways. Tiller is English and Tuller is German. Notice the umlaut above the U. Either form, I should say, means one who tills the soil. I didn't find Tiller among the traditional surnames of Wales, Scotland, or Ireland. Families named Tiller have been in the South since the late 17th century. William Tiller, who would later become William Tiller Sr., was born to George Tiller. Don't know what his mom's name was, but George was born in Somerset, England. At any rate, William was born in Rappahannock County, Virginia in 1664. In 1684, William, who would soon become or renamed Senior, married a lovely young lady named Mary Sue Coleman. They got hitched in Essex County, Virginia, and had at least 5 youngins, including sons William Jr. and John. By the late 1800s, this line had stretched to West Virginia and Tazewell, Virginia, and on to Tennessee, where James Elmer Tiller passed away in 2011. At the end of the day, I'm confident that Tiller is an antebellum family. Subject to no hanky-panky in the old barn loft or corn crib, it traces back to England or Germany. Number 2, Eller, or Eller. Just as with Tiller, there are linguistically English Eller, O-R, in Yorkshire, England, and a German form of Eller. It means dweller by an alder or elder tree. Harrison says that it's found in Scotland, but I couldn't find any support for that claim. For instance, George Fraser Black doesn't discuss it in his book on Scottish surnames. And by the way, MacIsaac doesn't even list it among the traditional surnames of Ireland, so that kind of leaves it to England or Germany. If Eller is in your family tree, you'll be happy to know that there is an Eller Family Association which is dedicated to drawing all Ellers and affiliated families into a cooperative genealogical effort. I'll post a link to it in the description. On the cover page of the association's website, it quotes a 1924 letter between George Eller in Georgia and his sister Sarah Caroline in Oklahoma. So it's geographically expansive. Going back in time, Johann Jacob Eller, who also added Senior to his name at some point in his life, was born around 1728 in the Palatinate. That's a German state within the now defunct Holy Roman Empire. He married a German Fräulein, Eva Marie Goethe. At some point, they moved to Pennsylvania and had 4 sons. One, Johann, or John Jr., moved to Rowan County, North Carolina, and later died in Buncombe County, North Carolina in 1847. John Jacob Eller III was born in North Carolina but later moved to Missouri. I wasn't able to find a direct link to the Eller folk in Georgia and Oklahoma, but that doesn't mean that a link isn't possible to find. Nevertheless, I'm confident that Eller is an antebellum family of German or English origin. Number 3, Townsend. When I received this request, 2 places popped into my mind: Townsend, Tennessee, and Townsend's funeral home in Murphy, North Carolina. Well, They're about 91 miles apart, both places are situated near the Nantahala Mountains in East Tennessee and Western North Carolina. My son Preston married a lovely young lady from Townsend, Tennessee, and I've attended at least a dozen funerals of loved ones at Townsend's, it's now called Townsend Rose Funeral Home in Murphy, North Carolina. For obvious reasons, this name evokes a mixture of emotions in me. While there are probably some instances in which members of a family might have switched the spellings of these names, thinking that they are just different ways to spell the same name, they actually have two distinct origins, albeit in England. Townsend, or Send, S-E-N-D at the end, was given to a person who dwelled at the extremity of a village or town. Son, S-O-N, originated in Lancashire, England. It was the locals' way of saying Tomlinson. Now you might note that we covered Tomlinson in episode 9. That was premiered, I think, on February 3rd, 2022. In Scotland, the name Townsend appears in the records, but it isn't the same name. Townsend and Townsend are associated with County Cork, Ireland, and have been since the middle of the 17th century. That was the age of Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell, that is, the Lord Protector of Great Britain. Well, it wasn't called Great Britain then, it was called England and Ireland, Scotland, so on and so forth. Anyway, there's a significant treasure trove of genealogical information on the descendants of Benedictus Townsend, who was born in 1710 and died in 1769. It's called the Townsend Family of South Carolina, Florida, and Kentucky. The collection should have added North Carolina to its title because it included information on Temperance Townsend. She died in Winston-Salem while attending school there in 1856. 2 years earlier, in 1854, Wilson Bailey Townsend was born in Pennsylvania. He and some other men, when they grew up, moved south and formed the Little River Lumber Company. It became the foundation on which Townsend, Tennessee was founded and named. It looks like the Pennsylvania line originated in Berkshire, England, with the birth of Richard Townsend in 1652. He married Anne Hutchins in England and moved to Pennsylvania, where they lived out their lives. At the end of the day, these two lines of Townsend are antebellum with deeper roots in England or Ireland. Number 4, Griffith. Griffin, with the Y-N. I was happy to get this request because we haven't had a good representation of a Welsh surname in quite a while. Griffith seems to have begun its history as a personal name. I won't even attempt that one. It morphed into Griffith, I guess, and then to Griffith before landing at Griffith in the medieval era. I couldn't find a meaning for grip or griff, but the IUD means chief lord. One of the first members of the Griffith family in the South was Owen Griffith Sr. He was born in Wales around 1624. He got hitched to Jane Williams, another common Welsh surname, in 1650 on the Llyn Peninsula in Wales. Now I'm probably mispronouncing that. Maybe somebody will correct me on it. He later married Mary Hunt in the Isle of Wight. If you were in England, it would be on the Isle of Wight, but in Virginia, it's in the Isle of Wight. He was born in 1681. Sorry, I don't know what happened to Jane, though. His first wife, but they had a son named John, and he was born in the Isle of Wight in 1658, but he moved a couple counties south into North Carolina. He lived out his life in Bertie County and met his maker there in 1735. Number 5, Walls, or Wall. I have lived in two places thousands of miles apart where Wall or Walls was a prominent family name. My hometown of Oliver Springs, Tennessee has many folks named Walls, including my old classmate Melinda Walls. Later, I found out that one of the most famous historical figures to have lived in Dunning, Scotland, where I lived, was Maggie Wall. She was burned alive as a witch in 1657. Witch burnings didn't just happen in Salem, Massachusetts, folks. Scotland in the 17th century put over 1,000 people to death for witchcraft. I wrote about those occurrences in my books. Nowadays, though, witches are safe in Scotland, but exercises of free speech are subject to jail time. On March 3rd, 2025, Madeline Kearns, a reporter for the Free Press, bravely told the story of a 74-year-old grandmother who was arrested in Glasgow for holding up a sign asking for a discussion about abortion. Nonetheless, there are English, Norman, and German versions of Wall. In England, the name was given to a dweller by a rock wall. In Scotland, George Fraser Black believes that it was an alternate form of Wallace. The Norman family Duval was Gaelicized in Ireland to the ball, I guess. It then morphed into Wall. In America, as I alluded to earlier, Wall or Walls is a prominent family. There's a Wall Town community in Durham, North Carolina. It was named after an enslaved man named George Wall. He worked as a custodian at Trinity College, which would be renamed Duke University. Go Blue Devils. Among the first families named Wall or Walls that I could find in the region, that's the South or Appalachia, was started in 1771 when an unknown couple of Virginians gave birth to Thomas Wall. When he was old enough, he married Frances Lamb. Together, they had at least 4 sons. Nathan, Andrew, and Henry went on to live in Indiana, but William Henderson Wall lived out his life in Randolph County, North Carolina. As we've mentioned a few times on the Vantage Point, simple names can have multiple origins. Walls and my own last name, Van, are no exceptions. You'll need a paper trail and perhaps a Y chromosome DNA test to locate the origin of your line. Well, that's about all I have for you today, folks. I hope you got something meaningful out of the discussion and will join me again here on the Vantage Point. If you'd like a free copy of the list of names and families that we have covered thus far, write to me at vantagepoint22@gmail.com and I'll send it to you ASAP. Until we meet again, God bless you and yours. Bye-bye.